So today we are joined with Lital Badash, Senior Cloud Security Architect from Microsoft. Hi, Lital, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We are joined with Yolanda Santana, IT consultant from All Bits Tech. Yolanda, how are you?
I'm great, honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Kim Bassett, CTO of Jetty IT Solutions. Kim, how are things with you?
Going well. We're happy to be here. Super excited.
Perfect. That's great. I've got a lot of messages in the chat. Mark from Wales. Hi, Mark. Justin from California. We've got Tanya from Texas. Brian from White Cloud Security. Hi, Brian. South Africa. Wow, Canada, I mean, it's amazing. So many people have joined us today. That's so great. You feel free to submit all your questions to the Q&A session. We will have time for Q&A at the end, and the session is also being recorded. So if you couldn't join us or if you have to leave halfway through, you could view this later. So let's get to meet our panelists today. Lital, do you want to tell us a few words about yourself?
Sure. I'm Lital. I'm Cloud Solution Architect in Microsoft, based in Israel. We are helping our partners building their technical capabilities for designing cybersecurity solutions. I came with experience in software engineering and 4 years of cybersecurity research. Very excited to be here today.
Amazing. So it sounds like you've got a lot of knowledge to share with us. Yolanda, share a little bit about yourself, please.
So I'm an IT consultant. I provide technology solutions for small and medium businesses throughout South Florida. I've been in the industry for about 18 years and working for mostly MSPs as an IT service manager, senior systems engineer, project manager, you name it. I've worked in that position. And after doing that for about 15 years, decided to start All Bits Tech.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Kim, last but not least.
Hey y'all, Kim Bassett, CTO and co-founder of Jetty IT Solutions here in Texas. Very similar to Yolanda, about 15 years in the industry, primarily focused on help desk ranging from education sectors, startups, large corporations, and basically got to where, hey, we could be helping out so many more businesses with, our different models and things like that. So let's go. And so that's what brings me here today.
Love it. Thank you all. A little bit about myself. If you haven't seen me on one of the webinars recently, I'm a customer success manager here at Atera. I also have a bit of background in IT and cybersecurity. I did 4 years of military service in IDF. And I also worked at eToro as a security engineer in the fintech space. And here I am today. So we can get started. We've got a lot on our agenda, exciting stuff. We're going to be talking about how COVID-19 impacted cybersecurity, which we all know that it has, trends and predictions for 2021 and beyond, which threats you and your customers should be aware of, how can cybersecurity help you attract new customers, and some practical tips for talking to your customers about potential threats and what services and toolbox you can offer them. And of course, at the end, we will have a live Q&A session. You can start submitting your questions now in the Q&A and we will get to it at the end. I will mention that we are an all-women's panel for Women's Month. It's very exciting. Let's get started. Great. So we're going to start by talking about how COVID-19 impacted cybersecurity and what's coming up next. Lital, I'm sure you've got a lot to share here.
Well, yeah, all the COVID-19 cybersecurity story is probably starting with working from home. So overnight, billions of people started working remotely. Companies were reminded that cybersecurity is fundamental, but also keeping their productivity. So we can see more companies extending security to more applications for remote work. And we were witness of recently zero exploits targeting exchange service called Hafinum. And we all know by now that we will probably see more of those. So from Office 365 telemetry, for example, we can see customers facing phishing, credentials phishings, or spear phishings, and we can see attack techniques have continued to evolve over the past year with notable variations in campaigns, orchestration, URL payloads, and delivery mechanisms. So the cybersecurity industry already suffered from lack of skilled cyber professionals, and 2020 brought its challenges. Raising the IT complexities. So definitely a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, working from home has been a big thing, especially in our community, especially among MSPs, IT professionals. And there's a lot that needs to be taken to address here, because the fact is that a lot of our customers or colleagues are now working on their home computers, their home infrastructure,
Definitely.
their home networks. And a lot of people are using VPN, which is very important and maybe even a must, but you don't know where they're working from. They might be working from home. They might go to a cafe if it's open and we're lucky. So the network might not be secure. They might be using a computer where other people have access to it, and you need to be careful with sensitive information or access to systems. And that is something that, needs to be a top focus. And of course, on the other hand, everything that comes with awareness and, not opening any suspicious links, not going into any suspicious sites, downloading any attachments. That's something that, people talk about, they know, they're kind of aware, but to what extent? I mean, we were talking about this the other day where, you might be in an internet cafe, logging into their Wi-Fi, not even thinking about the fact that you might be putting in some sensitive passwords, logging into, your bank account, or sharing info that might be shared plain text on their network.
Exactly. So, with all of us working from home with different private appliances, we need to think about zero trust, actually protecting our identities, starting with MFA and limited access. Business needs to check and update the cybersecurity resilience, and just regular risk evaluation, and to check their ability to respond and apply cyber processes. So all that you mentioned are good examples of incident that can happen while people are working from anywhere and with their own devices.
And especially, we've got some data where between February and May 2020, more than 500,000 people were affected by breaches by video conferences and video conference software. I mean, we're all using Zoom, we're on it now, and we need to make sure that we're aware of these breaches, of these vulnerabilities, that our software's up to date. And I mean, 500 million, that's insane. And of course, ransomware, which is just a whole load of money that we can go on and on about. So yeah, there's a lot there. Okay, so let's move into trends and predictions for 2021. Lital, do you know, I'm sure you've done a lot of research, but what are we looking forward to or not looking forward to?
So actually, I'm not the only one who's doing the research, but also according to Forrester, the future of cybersecurity is in the cloud. Actually, moving to the cloud can provide security benefits. When this new model is understood and configured correctly, organization can benefit with it a lot. I mean, organization must understand that security is all a shared responsibility, but moving to the cloud allowed you to transfer more of the security workloads to your cloud provider like Microsoft. And that can really ease a lot of companies that don't have the cybersecurity expert and don't have the resources to protect and also investigate and research and come with all the updated information regarding recent attacks. So this is something that we should all consider in the future, and this is the current trend right now, even after the last year of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I know we're all really busy, especially if you're managing an IT business, and you might not have the time and resources to, do this research.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. And also, there is a lack of cybersecurity experts worldwide. It's a known problem. It's going to get worse in the upcoming years. And we definitely need the expert taking care of our resources, our data, and our identities. And when we are going to the cloud with SaaS applications, we can be more safe, and we can say, okay, for that, someone else is taking care of, and that is very important also in terms of compliance for businesses.
Yes, that's a good point. So your suggestion is pick a good vendor that you trust, that that's doing the research for you, that's got the secure infrastructure, and leave it in good hands.
Yes, exactly. The CSP can do it for you. You can choose the one that can apply and migrate to the cloud, and applying all the right policies and configurations for you, so you can be safe and you can trust them.
Okay, I like it. Great. So now we want to talk a little bit about how to identify top threats your business is facing. So Lital, as you said, we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. But how do we try and face the things that we do know? Because if we know them, we can't ignore them. Kim, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you stay up to date, how you know where you could be vulnerable, how to protect yourself from your side as a business, as a manager that has employees. You want to make sure your network is safe, your computers are safe, that you're not vulnerable. How do you do that?
Yes, so as a company, education is so important. And as we know, cybersecurity has a massive array of different vulnerabilities. So the best way that we've been utilizing is the communities out there, from social media communities to being on RSS feeds from popular cybersecurity websites, paying attention to the news, and even utilizing our colleagues that we have, amongst different MSPs or people that's in the industry. I think that gives us a nice advantage to be able to equip ourselves with what's going on. And through that, we're able to strategize how we could better protect ourselves as a company, how we can educate our employees, because that could be a vulnerability point, right, for your company. And through all of that education, we're able to implement a good tactical plan that assists our customers and clients to make sure that their company is safe beyond just the software, your data, your customers. It's so far reaching. So that's, education is the biggest one, staying proactive, not reactive. That's really what we've been utilizing a lot for us.
Thank you, Kim. Yolanda, do you mind sharing a little bit about what you actually do? What policies do you have implemented? Which security software? How do you make sure your network and infrastructure are protected?
Right. Well, personally, as for my company, the same as Kim, we do research and we take a look at all the feeds and keep, reading the forums that are out there to find out what's going on. We do weekly meetings with our staff to discuss top threats or things that they have seen, and then reviewing how our security might be vulnerable and tightening our security. As far as policies, we definitely, implement audits on a regular basis to see and make sure that we have not let anything slip through the cracks and tighten all of that. We use Microsoft Exchange reports to make sure that malware and phishing attacks are not coming through, and tightening that as well. As far as our backups, we're constantly keeping an eye on that, and you name it, group policies, everything.
Also, of course, I want to add the threat protection, threat intelligence consumption can really help for this threat protection. So if you have a threat protection vendor and you can, be aware of all the, the relevant and the newest and the upcoming IOCs, and you just get it as your information, you can work with that and you can be very prepared to upcoming. So it is also very recommended to consume threat intelligence.
Yes, 100%. And I can share from my experience, a few things that we did in places that I worked is make your employees read and sign a do's and don'ts form when they start, which is really important. Like, it's basic things that they might not think of. Don't plug in USBs that you don't know into your computer. Don't share your password.
Write your password.
Don't write it on a post-it note on your desk. Don't log into unsecure networks and share private information. And I mean, these are things that, of course, can be enforced. You can have a data leakage protection policy, and you can have an antivirus, anti-spam, everything. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you protect the network and the infrastructure. It just takes a few clicks to download malicious software, to send some sensitive info, to leave your computer unlocked, to log into your systems from some random computer, and even things that I see on a day-to-day basis where people save their passwords in Google, in their personal Google accounts. I'm like, no, don't do that, because you're logged in on all your devices. You can lose your phone, and you've got the company's most important software, username and password. If you're an admin or domain controller, it's like, don't.
And what's worse is when it's saved in a file called passwords.
Yes.
That's a good one, always. The users are still the weakest link here in the cybersecurity. So, of course, awareness and need to educate our user to behave correct in the cyber world, actually.
Yes, of course. So that's something that I really like, because then if you've got it written down, someone's signed on it, they're liable. They're responsible for this, and they might be a bit more aware and cautious of doing these things. And there's a lot of different training tools and software you can use to send out test phishing emails and see, how many people in your company click the links. And you can point them out and say, you failed the security test. And then, you can train them, you can test them, and it's just so important. We all know it, but not everyone knows it. And that's a good way to do that. Perfect. So now let's go and talk a little bit about identifying the top threats that your customers are facing. How do you make sure your customers are protected, are secure, that they're aware, that they're trained? Because at the end of the day, if they get hacked, if something happens to them, who are they going to call? Not Ghostbusters. In this case, they will call their MSP or their IT professionals. I'm sorry if I've got really bad jokes. They will be calling you. So how do you do this? Yolanda, what do you do?
Right. So I'm going to go back to something I mentioned before with Microsoft Exchange. I use reports, advanced threat protection, like Lital mentioned. We definitely take a look at all of those reports and find out who are our top offenders, who are the top targets, and implement security to narrow those holes and make sure that none of that gets through to our clients, and so they don't suffer. I hope that answers Gabrielle's question as well.
Yes, we'll get to all the questions at the end too. Kim, I know you've got some nice info to share with us.
Yes. So one thing that we utilize with our company is a very quick audit as we're getting to know our customers. find out what their company does, and then start exposing some of the vulnerabilities dependent upon this simple questionnaire that we score. It allows us to give a infographic for our visual learners while still speaking, so they can get an understanding of where these security breaches might live and how does that affect them in a relational matter, not informational. Because sometimes if it's very transactional, then they don't quite grasp the severity, right, of where this could happen. So, we'll go in, hey, how old are your servers? Do you have a firewall? What kind of antivirus do you use? And sometimes with these smaller businesses, they don't have that. So it goes back to the education on this is why you should really consider utilizing this and building that relationship, seeing what they do with their company, because it also goes beyond just hardware, right? So say if it's a logistics company, if their data gets skewed some way, that's them losing direct money. If they're losing deliveries, or if it's a financial institution and there's a security breach from poor networking security, that's a huge thing too, because that's directly correlated to their clients' dollars. So we utilize this this accelerated audit, as we call it, just to begin conversations, and then that way we can develop with them a strategic plan on how they can become, more protected against cyber nefarious things going on that nobody's really tracking.
Is this something that would make you decide whether you're going to take on this new client or not?
What we've realized is with a lot of the clients that we first get in, if we came at it with, you need this, this, and this, and this, and we're very demanding, once again, not being relational, as my business partner, Jeremy Thompson, always talks about, you can find out the where their insecurities might be, right? And so you sit there and you tell them the reasonings why. If they are very heels dug in, they don't want to go that route, then yeah, we'll go back to the drawing board and then say, we'll present to them too. Realize that if we were to take you on as the client, because you have not implemented these, simple change of habits, which is most of it, right? You could be affecting our business and then all of our other clients that we're working with. And so when they also, most times, when they see that there is a potential loophole on, their failure to want to be more secure, and they see how much that can affect things, as we know, with a lot of these breaches that have happened, it kind of makes them stop and think, and then it really reopens the door. So for the most part, we haven't had the rejection on like, no, I'm okay. Because when you relate it to them and that your choice for here affects these other things, and at the end of the day, that could affect your revenue, it could affect your client, it could affect your reputation, they really stop and then take a second look at it. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does, thank you. So yeah, I mean, I heard someone talk about this, saying they know how critical cybersecurity is, but they struggle to communicate that urgency to their clients. So you touch upon that now when you do this audit, you ask them the questions, you make it into numbers, which is very easy. You come up to someone and you're like, okay, you are X out of 100%. And they can either be like really frightened, we're not doing very well, help me please, or, the complete opposite and be indifferent to it. Yolanda, how do you communicate this to your customers? What's the conversation around security?
Right. So every customer is different. You definitely have to take into consideration the industry that they're in and try to talk at their level. We are so used to being among our peers that we get used to talking in acronyms, and a lot of times it goes way over their head. So you try to, pull examples from something that they would be familiar with, whether it be repairing a car or something in a medical procedure, saying, comparing something like that instead of using acronyms that we were so used to. So tried doing that to communicate to clients the severity of not following through with cybersecurity protocols.
Yeah. Do you have customers that also ask for certain compliance or penetration tests or reports if they're very aware?
I do have customers that like the reports. They may not understand what they are, but we definitely sit down with them and explain to them what the reports are and what the results are. So yeah, we definitely do that for our clients, for sure.
Right.
Cyber.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Kim, how do you feel about this? So of course you shared how you work, but I'm guessing that it does give you some sort of advantage here with the customers because you're prepared. You come with the numbers, with the questions, and then they can't really avoid it.
Yeah, so we don't go about it with the fear-mongering mentality. It's more of building that understanding with them. And like exactly as Yolanda said, every client is different. Their learning styles are different. That's one, basic psychology thing you start learning. And, the more conversations you have with your clients, it kind of gives you a portal to see, oh, well, they do a lot of things on their phone. Do you have antivirus on your phone? What kind of company information do you use, on your devices? Because sometimes they might just think it's whatever's in the office. Oh, it's my desktop in the office. Like, this is separate. This is my phone. But are you doing business things on your phone? We're like, well, yeah. I was like, well, that's a vulnerability. So, and we get to use that too in our sections in our audit as we go in. But having those different examples, having those conversations, building that trust relationship, and explaining that cybersecurity is only as good as you're staying proactive. Having 100% impenetrable type of thing. Yeah, that's what we're striving for. But you always have that one person that can figure out how to get into it through some bad gateway. So it's really just trying to prepare yourself for, for the worst, but hoping for the best and giving yourself all the tools that you need. So, the pens testing, that's something if say we're in on our audit and we're trying to explain what that vulnerability is, we might use one of our employees that's an ethical hacker, do a pens test, and then explain this is how fast it took. Mind you, we get their permission first. We don't go and say, by the way, while we're having this conversation, our guy over here ran ahead and ran a pens test, and I hate to tell you, it's a little dicey. Yeah, that's not really a good way to establish trust. So like, you broke into our system before we even got each other's name.
So, someone else.
Yeah. We're like, we're trying to show you. No, so we don't go that way. We're like, hey, if you're interested, we would love to show you at no extra cost to you how fast it could take, while you're getting your latte at Starbucks, checking your your Slack messages, and so-and-so sent you an Excel spreadsheet through Slack. The guy over here that just looks like he's eating a croissant, yeah, he has a copy of that. So it's once again back to the relational, turn it into educational, and then that really helps develop that tactical plan of protection.
Yeah. Lital, do you have any tips for our listeners, how to communicate this, how to state the urgency, how to explain it so that they understand?
So both Yolanda and Kim gave very good examples and very good stories of how it works, but just want to add them that all the cybersecurity assessment process, if you started with your customers and you started and you just show them all of your architecture and your policies and what is currently implemented, and eventually you can get some kind of a score, a number. I'm like 50% protected, I'm below of average, up average. And basically they can start a conversation with this number, although this number is very not important after we want to utilize some of the recommendations. But it can be a good starting point. You say, okay, we have an overall cybersecurity assessment here, and this is the score we got. Let's start to talk on each topic, and we see, hey, how are you in incident response, and how is your identity protections, and that could really lead to a very productive conversation with a an onboarding client or customer, of course.
Thank you. I'm interested to ask you, Kim, Yolanda, do you get any pushbacks for certain things like MFA, patching, password management? What's the deal there?
Definitely get pushback, especially with the businesses that have been kind of established, and they don't think that there's anything that they need to be secured. They would rather use easy passwords. They don't want to, the multi-factor authentication is a hassle. So definitely, like Kim suggested, showing them what could happen if they're hacked, if there's, any viruses, any ransomware, any attacks, and how the businesses would shut down, essentially.
To what extent would you manage this for your customers, and where would you expect them to manage it for themselves regarding these systems? The password managers, enforcing multi-factor authentication on their systems, managing their VPNs, their firewalls, their antivirus. And what do you do, and what do you expect them to do?
Right. So we do everything as far as they'll let us. And then if they don't let us, we provide the training necessary, typically a point person, or as much training as they want, to make sure that they follow these procedures and these processes, and make sure that they're secure as best as we can. Obviously, going back to what you referred, earlier, as far as a client that you won't take on, if they do not implement this, they will come back and point at you if they get hacked, because you knew that this could happen and you did not take care of them. That's how they will look at it. So do you want to take on a client like that? Yeah.
And Kim, how does this fit in your business model? Everything that's got to do with security versus IT, proactiveness, reactiveness. How do you manage all that?
Well, after those initial conversations, you get kind of the lay of the land of the people that you're, about to embark on, taking on. And the quickest one that I've noticed is the password manager, getting them on a good password manager, showing them how easy it is to use. You don't have to write down passwords. You don't have to even program your phone with the multi-factor authentication, because most of these have them built in. If you can make it easy for that transition, and then also explain, don't think about it as just for your company's sake. Start using that in your personal password management, your banking, your going online to your teledoc type things. All of those different things that we use now, that's all cloud-based, that we do from the little mini computer in our hand, our phone. If we make if we increase the amount of good habits, then personal starts spreading into business. So it's not as hard of a climb. Yes, there's the initial piece, but you also let your client know, hey, if you run into an issue with that, don't worry. We will help you walk through that. We'll help you train your employees and do best practices and those pieces. So we use the password management as just a gateway, because that's something everybody can use. And then when you start showing like, okay, well, because you didn't even have to think about a complex password that's 16 characters long, not from the dictionary, and expect to remember that, when you take that thought process out and you're just like, ooh, facial recognition, biometric scanning, I'm in my manager, and let it autofill. but not save from your browser password. No, let's not do that. Taking out that extra thinking, and it just, as I say, auto magically work. You get a lot more buy-in by your clients and saying, hey, you just took the first step of being more secure. And they're like, really? It's like, yeah, it's that easy as that.
Yeah.
So.
And how about secure backups, antivirus? Is that something you offer as an additional service? Is that included? How do you manage that?
Do you want to take this, Yolanda? Because you had a great answer last time. But we do. We look at it as an all-encompassing thing. But.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Again, we offer many different levels, and we would love to manage their backups and antivirus. And if they don't get it from us and they prefer to go somewhere else, we'll also manage that as well. So we will want to make sure that no matter what, they're covered, whether they decide to go with a separate solution or go with us. But we want to make sure that it is managed and taken care of. We do provide, we use Acronis through Atera for backups with the ransomware protection, obviously. We also use a password manager. We definitely utilize a lot of different tools and technologies out there to make sure that our clients are protected.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Let's talk a little bit about the practice, how we can actually leverage this whole world to A, stay secure, to make sure our customers are secure, and B, maybe this could be an opportunity to upsell, to expand our services that we offer, or sell some more software or different tiers of support. Kim, how do you do this? I know we did speak about this, that you have different tiers, different SLAs.
Yes, so we do a monthly tiered model where they have a couple of entry fees. We'll also adjust it on size of the organization. Some of the smaller companies, they need the protection, right? So there's the basic one. We go in, we monitor your antivirus, we check for end of life with your hardware, those pieces of little vulnerability, to one of our top tier packages where your SLA is 24/7, 365 to get, a submission. You can, and this is the response time we might have. Also with that, we're able to basically kind of think about it as an investment, right? So we'll relate it to, okay, let's say you didn't go with the monthly monitoring. We get you there with the initial setup. You end up getting hacked. Now you're paying per hour for us to fix the hack. And then now you're like, maybe I should have just did the monthly monitoring. So we kind of give them different security blankets they can choose from, upgradable at any time kind of deal. And I've noticed too, as you build that relationship with the clients and they start seeing the, how well you work, fast response times, a lot of times they'll even, justify them to go to a higher tier. They're like, man, they get back to me really well. I wonder what this would look like if, say, I went with like the tier 2 package. And, it lets you kind of keep reevaluating, because companies will do that, right? They'll sign an annual contract with you. And then as they go through the review, well, how well did this company actually help me? Was it worth the money? Did it make me more money because I didn't have to worry about these other pieces? Were my employees more productive because they had hardware and software that was useful for their position, through those justifications? Then, they get into talks. They're like, hey, sign me up for that 3rd tier plan. Y'all did a great job. Also, they're like, we've been doing this for about 5 months. Maybe we don't quite need the top tier. We can back down to 2. That's fine, because you've still given that partnership type of relationship, because as that company grows, we want to grow with you, right? So that's kind of how we approach it.
Nice. Thank you. And Yolanda, do you have any advice or tips you can share with our audience, how to put this all in practice? And of course, if any of you guys have anything to share, please submit it in the chat and we'll be happy to, share it with everyone.
Definitely. So we always start with a client in network assessment. And with that, when they onboard with us, we do documentation. I mean, documentation is key. Provide that to the client and show them this is what you have and this is what we need to work towards, because you're not secure, you have holes at this area of your department, your employees have way too much access. So you definitely want to put in place a plan to get them more secure, lock down any vulnerabilities, whether that be saving to your local hard drive, allowing USB attachments, you name it. So we like to put that into place depending on how further or how far the client wants to go with us, whether it's all services or whether it's just a little bit, a few hours here and there to help them get along with their business and make sure that they are secure.
So I'm guessing this is something you do when you onboard a new client, but is this something that you'd open up every now and then, bring it to the table, talk about things, see if there's anything they'd like to add to the package? That's something you'd initiate from your end?
Definitely. That's something we would initiate, especially when there's any major announcements or cybersecurity attacks. We reach out to our clients and take that moment to say, hey, let's take advantage of this. Let's update you. Let's upgrade you, whatever it may be, and get you up to date so that you're not vulnerable. You have not experienced this, but I have heard, I know of people or other clients that have been victims of this attack. So let's make sure you're not one of those.
Yeah. And Lital, what's your advice for our listeners? How to present themselves as a secure company, or where should they get started? How to strategically plan in-house and outbound?
Well, I really think that what Kim and Yolanda said are the right way to go. For cybersecurity, we first need a plan, and the documentation is the key point. We need to understand what are we doing and what we're going to do in case of an incident and how we're going to respond, and all of that, all the active defense and all of our policy as an organization must be written, because on the day that we will be hacked and we don't have this plan, we don't know who to reach out for help, who to ask, what exactly to do. Should we isolate or we shouldn't isolate the network or the specific computer? What should we do? So we definitely need this education place to start with reading, to writing our own policies according to Microsoft needs. There are plenty of places you can start. Somebody already wrote these policies for you, and you can do the changes for your own organization. So that would be my recommendation for a starting point.
Thank you. Thank you. So, top takeaways for today. We spoke about how awareness and education is key, how this is the most important factor, because no matter how secure your infrastructure is, you can use as many tools as possible. You can have antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spam, anti-everything, but still it's enough that one person does the wrong thing and it's over. How security can be an opportunity to upsell, to sell higher tiers, as Kim mentioned, more services, software, things that you can use to make your business grow, and of course preserve your customers and make sure they're secure and up to date. And the most important thing, protect yourselves. If it's your network and your employees or your customers, to protect your reputation, to make sure you are ready if something happens, and to try and avoid it as much as possible. So we're going to jump into the live Q&A session now. We've got some questions coming in, and if you have any more, please put them in the Q&A session, and we can get started. So feel free, Kim, Lital, Yolanda, to take on any questions that you'd like to answer. I'm going to bring it up here for myself right away.
I can answer one. They're from our guest, Tanya Koshinsky. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. She asks, I run a small business. How big does a company need to be to consider the importance of cybersecurity? That's a great question. I have worked with other people that really depend on their size. Like, oh, well, this is a much bigger company. For our MSP, it doesn't matter if you have 2 employees or you have 2,000. It's always important for basic practices. As we mentioned before, if you have a strong personal habits of protection, it naturally flows into your business presence. So if say you have 2-3 people in your company, even if it's just email, let's have good email practices. We use QuickBooks or something like that from financing. Make sure you're not accessing that at a cafe, or else then other people have your financial incomes and client data. So to me, size doesn't really matter. It's applicable as you grow. Like we mentioned, we want to grow with your company. So even if you start off as a little startup that's 1 to 2, who knows, in a year, you could be 100, 200. So if you start off with the great practices at the beginning, you're solid no matter how big your company grows.
Thank you, Kim.
I see a question here from Mike Greco that I can answer. He says, what do you find is the best way to communicate these things to your customers? Regular sit downs, email blasts, Twitter posts. I find the best time to communicate these things is when I'm going in to do an in-person job, whether it be one of my techs or myself. And at that point saying, hey, did you know this is going on? What, maybe we can have sit down or talk about it further, or we could talk about it now. And also email blasts. Definitely I'll have a client say, hey, I saw that email or that newsletter, and can you tell me more about it? So those two for sure.
Thank you, that's great. I can see that Kenneth is asking Kim what name of audit software you use.
So the system that we actually use is in-house. It started off with the close relationship we have with our chief marketing officer, Ben Keel. He has a very long line of tech sales in his background. And as we were aligning with, okay, when you go into a client, what are some of the questions that you asked? And he had a full questionnaire. And so what I did on the back end was I took that questionnaire, which simple form, Excel form, Google form, whichever you use. And then we based the scoring off of sectors. So like I said, it's very homegrown kind of thing. And utilizing Power Automate, Power Apps through Office 365, we're able to apply that to a tablet, a phone, laptop for our salespeople that are going out. In each sector, what we do is we might have 5 choices to do it. And if you just say, I don't know if we have a network firewall, well, that's a flag. So you might get, say, only a point, or you might not get any points. And then you take the average of that sector, and then that way they could see it per section that you're doing. So we'll have infrastructure, security, hardware, life cycle, a lot of that initial questions, so they can get a holistic view of where they're sitting at their current technology. And then you can relate that to, all right, so let's actually break down the costs that you're currently spending, whether with an IT company or as a justification for them maybe wanting to hire an IT department. And then we're like, hey, we'll actually take on that department for you, right? And then you take that average of the score, say they're spending $2,000 a month on IT support, but that's only giving them a score of about 50%, across the board. And they're like, wait, so if I'm spending $2,000, only 1,000 of it is really protecting us? And we're like, yes. So that also brings into, I saw a question earlier that was asking about our tiered packages. We'll use that to say, all right, you're spending $2,000, but really only getting 50% of the protection. We're charging, $3,000 a month for, say, a larger company. But these are the areas of how we could improve your score so that you have a more of a return on your IT investment. And for a lot of our clients, that relation helps. Like I mentioned, we do it by sector, and then we'll also color code blocks. Like, hey, this one's bright red. Red tends to have like a negative connotation. Going back into the psychology, green, pretty good. And green doesn't mean 100%. We'll do it in thirds. So it's what is it? Like if it's below 30%, obviously red, 66% yellow, anything above that, greenish. So also, I think while we do with that audit, it also lets some of our smaller businesses plan their scale of attack or their tactics, right? Of you don't have to do all of this all at once, which can be very overwhelming, super costly. So let's focus on those red areas. Let's start there. And that also helps build the relationship. So once again, simple form that we made, turn it into an algorithm that works best for you. And then, align that with the justification for your pricing.
Yeah, I think this has given some of our listeners here some ideas, and I can see some are asking for the audit questionnaire. So if you're willing to share some of these questions, we could attach it to our blog post later. Kim will talk about that. You can think about it. You don't have to answer now. But yeah, we'll definitely look into that. And I hope, this is giving you a little bit of some thinking, and you have to create the algorithm or the questions that work best for you and for your customers, because you know them best. Great.
So yes, I can see her question here from C. Martin. He's asking if a customer has been moved to the cloud, most of the security is already implemented, right? So moving to the cloud, it doesn't guarantee full security. Security is a shared responsibility. And this responsibility varies by service type. When you are talking about the cloud, there is IaaS, IaaS and PaaS and SaaS. In IaaS, infrastructure as a service, you have to secure the operation system and the middleware and the application and its code. And in platform as a service, you have to secure the application code. It's on you. And with SaaS, you only have to secure the application itself and the right use on it. The other is on the application provider. So there are different levels of responsibility as it comes to the cloud, and you need to be aware of that it is a shared responsibility. So as more as you are your applications and all of infrastructure is in the cloud in the SaaS form, then you have less to worry about. That is right, but definitely the wrong thinking is that if you are on a cloud, then you don't have to worry about anything. For example, if you have a cloud provider and you didn't adopt MFA, then your identity is in a real risk and it will probably get compromised. So you always need to be the good user and use the adopt MFA and use good email hygienes. 90% of attacks start with an email. You don't want your users clicking all kind of links they shouldn't, and you still want to patch applications, even if you are on cloud, and of course limit access, least privilege when it comes to applications. So I hope I answered your questions.
Andy is asking, is there a good way to handle security on personal networks and the use of personal devices that they use when working from home?
Right, so this definitely goes back to group policies. Definitely have to lock down the use of personal devices, USB devices, drive redirections, basically not allow that. And this all depends on how are you managing the security for their devices at home, or are you not? They're using anything that they want. So this all depends on what the client is allowing their employees to use on their network, and what you advise your clients, because allowing them to attach any USB device from home, and not to mention who else has access to that device or computer in their house. You're just opening up for all kinds of vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I mean, we offer through Atera a work from home solution that we developed when COVID started. And a lot of customers are using it as a way for their customers to not use their home computer for the day-to-day work, but to connect to their work computer where it's a managed environment. You know what's allowed, what's not allowed. You can manage what he's doing, whereas if he's using his home computer, you have absolutely no control over it. So Yolanda, as you mentioned, not to allow them to share files to their personal computer. That's very important. If you're not using a work from home solution, then to set up a VPN to manage the traffic, external devices. It's an endless list. And I saw another question about what pen test software you could use. So from my experience, you can always take out an external company to do a pen test, a live one, and scan your network. But there's also things that you can do by yourself. There's dynamic scanners that you can run on your network and get some insights. There's just loads of tools out there, so you can get started with something. And if you do have the resources, then bring some experts to look into it. If you have software development, I find bug bounty programs to be very, very useful and helpful. But again, it needs to be managed correctly. I've used HackerOne in the past. This is not promoted or funded, just from my experience. Yeah.
I actually wrote a whole thesis about bug bounty programs. So it's I think it's the future. You go there in the future. We're definitely going to see more programs like that published by vendors.
Yeah, and so I just mentioned a few words, if not everyone knows it. This is where you pay white hat hackers to test out your software. It's of course agreed in advance. You can set limits, boundaries, what you want them to test, what you want to focus on, and you pay per finding. Rather with a penetration test where you bring a company to test it out, you pay in advance, not per finding. Okay, we've got time for one or two last questions. Please, I'll let you choose them.
I saw one from Tim Brooks that said, how much user training is done with clients? Security starts with the user, and they are usually the most easily hacked. 100%. They normally are. For us, we'll schedule like about an hour-long training. Also depending on their company size. So say if it's like a call center, people are on shifts. So, we'll work with their admin to kind of set up a quick schedule. You definitely don't want it to be too much information. Not everyone, everyone's a sponge, but as much as you take in, you're going to leak some, right? So short bites, we'll tailor it quickly to see, how it's relational to whatever their business is. So they have actual use case scenarios so that we can identify better practices with that. But yeah, we'll do maybe like a 3-hour session for, say, maybe a group of 50 people. with breaks, in there for comprehension and, not absorbing so much information at once. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Kim. So I think that's all we've got time for today. There's a whole lot more questions here. I know it's a hot topic and we've got some amazing speakers that shared a lot of their knowledge. I will say, if you have any other questions to us at Atera, you can always reach out to us, success@atera.com. And if you're not on our Facebook group yet, please join our community. I'm sure you can ask all these questions there, and our customers and community will be happy to help, and also on Reddit. I want to thank you all, Kim, Lital, Yolanda, and all of our listeners here today for joining. I had a blast. This was amazing. Hope you enjoyed it too. And thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It was a
Mahalo,
pleasure.
y'all. Thank you.
participate. Yeah, thank
So
you
great.
all.
Well, have a great day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Frank, I saw you joined us from Australia. Very brave. Thank you. And we will see you all soon. Have a good one.